Hello.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
You can feel the energy. It's infectious.
Speaking of the energy, we are starting to balance out the North America here, and not only do we have Mike M2NA Vince VE6 LK, Jeff, I can never remember his call sign, but we've also got the one and only. Where'd it go? There you go. The Grouch of New Hampshire,
Hey,
The OG.
the OG. So how are we guys? How are we guys doing tonight?
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. Well, hey, reason we kicked this live stream off tonight was to really talk to Mike. Hopefully, you guys saw the video that Mike put up here right before this one, talking about his fun adventures in the cold and doing both a POTA activation, but also the VHF contest for the ARRL. And so we wanted to kind of talk about that video tonight and kind of get you guys involved, and obviously questions, comments, get them up in the chat, and let's just kind of go from there. So, Mike, if you want to tell us a little bit about that, and
Yeah. First of all, thanks for doing this too. And anyone who's watching now, I know that the Kids Table is kind of a new channel. So if you're not, for whatever reason, if you're not subscribed, I haven't drank all month and I'm already slurred.
well, there we go.
So make sure you no, I'm cracking myself up. Make sure you sub to the channel. And I think it's really cool to actually do the live stream like this, and hopefully it turns out good because I'm really excited about it. But to do this like right after the video where we can actually chat about it and kind of have a discussion. So, let us know in the chat, regardless, if you like the topic, if you like the idea of doing something like this. So let Tim and the others know, and maybe we'll be able to do something like this for some future premieres and stuff. But so the VHF contest, a couple real quick basic things about that. So there's lots of contests for VHF, but I'm kind of talking about what's viewed as like the main ones, and those are the ones that the ARRL does, the league does, and they do 3 of them throughout the year. There's some very subtle differences to the rules for scoring and stuff, but they do them in January, June, and September. And those are really 3 of like the biggest days for like VHF and above activity when they do those. And I got into doing these contests when I did my first soda activation. My friend had a ICOM 705, which is now my ICOM 705. I bought it from him, but we wanted to kind of use all the capabilities in this thing and try like 2-meter sideband, and we figured let's do this where we got some elevation, and we did our first soda intentionally during a VHF contest so that we could get on and play with it. I made speaker wire dipoles for 2 and 6 that we had set up in the trees. I mean, it was real makeshift. My son, who's got his general, came along with us. So the 3 of us just went out and experimented and just wanted to try new things. And that was, if you look at my channel, that's the first very video I ever did was a YouTube short on that activation. And that's kind of what morphed into the channel, but that kind of became my passion for trying to look for different ways to combine activities in ham radio where you can use it as opportunities to learn and just try new things that you don't usually do, like POTA on 2 meters and above.
So you were talking about that. There's a couple guys that showed up in your video, and one of them you had mentioned was a tech. And so far, he has activated that park, or at least that park entity twice.
Yeah, at least twice. Yeah. Awesome. Excuse me. Yeah. So, and I've definitely noticed, more of an interest in trying VHF, the higher bit, going, 50 and above, in the last year or two. And, the contest is a great way, even if you are primarily a POTA operator like I am. And I activated after work on 17 meters. Like I'm not doing all VHF, but I look for these opportunities. And and stuff. But I've noticed more people that are willing to kind of try the VHF and above because they're chasing after some of POTA's awards, like the N1CC, where you have to work 10 bands at a particular park, or the POTA 6-pack awards as a hunter or activator, like leveraging contests like this where you can go out and you can make contacts on an HT for 2 meters or 1.25. That can help you get towards that N1CC. Or I did one of the contests from a POTA park intentionally just to get the 6-pack award. I picked the last park I needed that I was, close to getting it, and did it during a contest and just nailed it. It was easy because there's so much activity then. But yeah, that's kind of been my thing, looking for opportunities to really, combine POTA with other things and get more out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And Paul, just thinking, I remember you had a video up here not too long ago where you did some soda. You have some summits in your area. And we see, guys like Adam who are constantly up on the side of a mountain. And I believe Alan, Punk Rock Ham Radio, when he lived in California, he used to go up and do, as a tech, would go up and do soda summits with a 2 meter, 70 centimeter handheld. So, I mean, there are plenty of opportunities to make contacts, given, I mean, if you're obviously in an area, POTUS, you're going to start dealing with some local because you're dealing with the train a little bit more. But if you're in a populated area, there's no reason to not try it, or, just do it. Do it, right?
Yep.
An active ham populated area.
Yeah, no, and looking just real quick beyond the contests, there's other things coming up in the beginning of February is the AM rally. So if you're interested in trying AM, that's a great time to do it. Earlier in January was the RIDI contest. That's when I first did RIDI. Like, the contests do get a bad rap and stuff, and I get the frustration sometimes where the band's just jam packed on HF, but there can also be a good opportunity to kind of get your feet wet and just try different bands, modes, and stuff like that, because you're going to see that activity. And it's definitely that way at VHF. I was joking before the show. I was like, it's a lot like real estate. It's location, location, location. You want to have elevation, but you also need to have what I keep calling this ham density. You need to have, a good group, a good dense amount of hams in the immediate region, especially if you're talking about VHF, where you can make, enough contacts for a contest or a POTA activation or soda or whatever it is. So we're fortunate in Western New York and then Southern Ontario. There's 2 very active VHF clubs and groups. And in fact, one of them is the Ontario VHF Association. And you saw at the end of the video that all our club members were encouraged. We're associate members of the Ontario VHF Association. We all submitted our logs on behalf of Ontario because it's their 75th anniversary, which was cool. So want to hand all our points over to the Canadians so that they can get the credit this year.
Okay, so that's Ontario, Canada, not Ontario,
Yes.
New York.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Speaking on behalf of my countrymen, I thank you.
Oh.
Yes.
Mike, you ever noticed I know in a lot of your videos, like you drive up to summits and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You ever notice doing VHF on a summit that, like, it'll be completely dead on one side of the mountain, and then you turn around 180 degrees and all of a sudden the world opens up?
Yep.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. And there's times too where I've gone up I was on one soda site that it was a drive up, which made it easy. And I was testing out the elk antenna for like the first time. And I was in a situation where I was like totally out kicking my coverage. When I got home later that night, I got like 2 emails from people. They were like, we heard you, we were calling, but like I was up too high, and I was getting out too far compared to, where they were, like I said, I was getting out there, but they were hearing me, but I couldn't hear them. But it makes a huge difference getting up, and we have the elevation, but also line of sight. And with the line of sight too, it's important when you talk about, and this is what, and I've learned so much from doing some of these contests. There's a lot to learn when you get into the VHF space, but they talked about this, I remember, during the exams. I think it was for tech, things like foliage or leaves and trees, those are going to attenuate signals. It's not as bad for 6 and then 2, but you get up to UHF 70 centimeters or above, and then the trees can just destroy any chance that you have of getting out or receiving and stuff. So definitely look for clearings. There's a lot of factors that go into considering where you're going to operate for these, from having line of sight and elevation to the grid square, and where you got a good path. But it's fun, and it's like I said, it's part of the learning experience and whatnot. And you learn what you can do with certain bands and in just minimal power sometimes, and a good antenna.
Antenna being the key there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That 900 megahertz Yagi that you built, that's amazing. That thing is the coolest.
I didn't build any of them, so I can't take credit for that. But the two that we have, there's a traditional Yagi, which is for 900 megahertz, 33 centimeters, and then the loop one was for 23 centimeters, 1.2 gigahertz. And both of those, I think, were 14 or 15 elements. They're about a 15 dB gain. And so you get the directionality, but that power, when you are only using 1 or 3 watts, it's night and day. That 3 watts turns into more like 40. The 1 watt turns into like 15 or so. And all of a sudden, you're able to kind of focus that signal and get out there with very little power. And it's obviously a lot harder to add elements for 20 meters, 40 meters, to try to get that gain. It's a lot easier in the higher frequencies to get gain. And I can have 14, 15 element antennas that I fit in my back seat that I can hold with one hand. That's hard to do with HF.
Yeah, short of using like a front end loader, an excavator, or a tower crane to hold that 15 element HF beam, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The first times I went out and did the contest, I was just using speaker wire dipoles. I still used one of them in this contest, the 6 meter one. Something as simple as a dipole can still be, effective, but it's when I first started using some, antennas with real gain, it's amazing what difference it makes when you get good antennas.
Well, so Mike, if you had to think about, some of the strategies you employed to make sure you had people at the other end, like from I'll call it a marketing or advertising perspective.
Yeah.
How did you handle that stuff?
Well, the club definitely, on their pages like groups.io and stuff, encourage people to share their plans if they're going to be a rover or out portable like I was. The rovers, if you hear me use that term, those are people that are going to multiple locations. It allows them to operate in different grid squares, and these become multipliers, and that's why people do that. But we kind of share your plans when you're going to be out, where you're going to be, what your capabilities are going to be, what bands you have available, what modes you're going to operate, because there's people that go out, and I did it back in the fall, and I was FM only. So I only operated in FM back in the fall. I wanted to try it and see what you could do. Sure. But you share as much. I figured my plans out like the night before. I just was, it was a rough week, and I just was day by day, and I finally figured it out. And I was actually going to rove, and then I had so many problems setting up. I changed it last minute. I'm like, nope, I'm just staying put. I'm not taking this down and setting it up again in this weather. But
so Mike, you just mentioned something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You just mentioned something. You said I was FM only.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people may not realize that you can do more on 2 meters and 70 centimeters besides FM.
Mm-hmm.
That is just one phone mode. So you can run sideband, you can run AM, you can run CW, you can do data, and you can do FM. So there's multiple modes out there to be able to operate on the 2 meters. So you're not limited. And even as a technician here in the United States, you're not limited to just FM on 2 meters. So it's an opportunity if you don't have the space, I guess, to put up a 10 meter HF antenna, you can still take advantage of some of these other modes fairly easy. Now there might be a little bit of problem. There hasn't been a new all mode VHF, UHF radio manufactured in a while, but there are used ones that are out on the market to where you can run sideband, you can run AM, you can do the digital and the voice. But yeah, there are other opportunities besides just the FM.
Yeah, I wish there were more all band, all mode radios and stuff. There's not many. I have a 705. That's a good example. Yaesu has their new one coming out at some point.
They do, yes.
The 1F or something like that. And then
FTX 1F.
yeah, and then right now they sell the 991 Alpha. That's all band, all mode, 100 watt, as is the ICOM 7100. As well. And so those, let you do 2 meter, 70 centimeter SSB FT8, which is really neat. And it definitely makes a difference. I had a point in the contact in the video where I worked somebody on 6 and then we switched to 2 meters and we were trying 2 meter FM and he was in Batavia. I'm in Rochester. I don't know. It's like at least a half hour plus drive. So it's a decent distance. We weren't able to get it done on FM, but then we switched to sideband because he was on a 705 too. And once we got to sideband and it was all of a sudden weak signal. Now we were able to make that contact, that voice contact, no problem. So it's nice being able to have those options because you might not be constrained as much as you think on 2 meters sideband as you are compared to 2 meter FM and what you can do.
So if you were thinking about, to somebody's comment earlier that this doesn't sound like fun, this sounds like a business meeting. So I need to know, how many different food and beer pairing tastings were there?
There were absolutely none. I went out. I did not. I was out for a couple hours before I even touched my coffee. But hat tip to the boy at Coffee and the ham radios because the tumbler actually kept in that 20-degree weather the coffee cold for several hours. But I didn't have, other than half that cup of coffee, I didn't have anything to eat or drink for the hours that I was out operating. It was once you get on the air during these contests, it can be absolutely nuts. You're constantly working people, and as soon as they get you, they want you to run through all the bands that you can with them. In my instance, it means I'm getting out of the car, trying the Yagis for 900 megahertz and 1.2 gigs, and running back in the car, getting on 6, and I have such a hard time trying to film video when I'm doing it. I probably just need to put on like a camera and just let it go the whole time, maybe live stream it one of these days. But it's so nuts that I didn't eat anything till I got home that night.
Well, hey, so maybe for those that didn't get to see the video just before, we're going to drop a link to that in the chat. One of us will. And tell us about your setup. Tell us how long it took you to put it up, how many other people you were working with, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the setup took a lot longer than expected because I hit some snafus along the way, and stuff. But I'm setting up 2 masts, and each of those masts has a J-pole antenna hanging down. It's pretty easy deployment. But then I also have a dipole up on another. Then I have a speaker stand that I use for the elk antenna, which is for 2 and 70. And I use that primarily for weak signal, but I can adjust the polarization either way with the Elks, if anyone's not familiar, which is they're fantastic for if you're doing satellites and stuff like that, from what I hear. And then all that coax, and then I got like 4 coax cables running into the car, and I was so excited to try out this coax switch, which then and I watched Tim's video. I checked continuity and everything with this, auction buy that I got, and it looked good to go, and I plugged it in, and the SWR was off the charts. So I didn't feel like messing around at that point because I'd already spent way too long and could barely feel my fingers. And I just was like, I'll just be and see it on and off, on and off. And I didn't talk about it in the video, but I'll say that led to some mistakes. I did get I think it was a 70 centimeter sideband contact on the 6 meter dipole by accident because I forgot to switch antennas when I switched bands. So I got one. Yeah, I think it was a 432 sideband contact.
That's funny.
And it was horrible. And I was like, that was a struggle. I'm just thinking because I'm on 70 centimeters. And then I realized when it happened again and I saw the SWR, I was like, oh, that's what I did. So, mistakes are certainly made. But I have, because I'm more POTA at heart, if you Google any of the rovers that do these contests, they got these phenomenal setups. And they have the antennas all mounted on like the roof rack on the car and this and that. And they're just going from grid square to grid square to grid square. But I'm POTA at heart. So I'm kind of designed. The gear that I have is for going out, setting up at a park, taking down. And I have ham sticks for those quick roves, but nothing like that for, VHF, UHF, where I'm using multiple antennas for different bands, different polarizations. And, it just takes a while to set up. As someone commented in the video, they're like, is the color off or your hands that color because they're so cold? And I was like, it's probably both. But my hands are absolutely frozen at the time. I got things set up and then also after I took down. But anyway, it's not the most efficient setup at all. And I have those 4 antennas outside. 705 is the primary radio, and then I have HTs, and that's the thing in this contest because I'm running low power. I'm juggling lots of different HTs. I do have ones connected to the J poles for 220, 2 meters, 70 centimeters. But then the Yagis for 23 and 33 centimeters, I got to get out of the car. And I could probably mount those, but they're directional, so I need to know if I'm going north, south, east, west, or wherever the person is based on their location. So there's no easy way for me to do that yet that I figured out, unless I get everything on a nice, mast with a rotor or something. But for me, that's almost like too easy. Like I'm used to the challenge of having to set up and take down in different conditions and everything. And sometimes that challenge is the fun.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
It's a manual rotor, but I would bring my son along with you. Okay. And have him get out of the car and rotate the antenna.
Yeah. Antenna boy.
Here's a compass. Go point it, 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And I was looking at some setups, and there's those that rove, and they even have rotors built into the antenna systems on their car and everything else and whatnot. But no, I have some good antennas. I got some makeshift speaker wire ones. You kind of use what you have, and I've added bands and I've added gear to the arsenal every time. I don't think in ham radio we ever find that perfect radio antenna, that perfect bag, that perfect go box or whatever. Like it's there's always something else out there that's better.
Yeah, it's good enough. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was going to say, even with speaker wire antennas, if it radiates, that's all you need. I mean, it's omnidirectional versus directional, but it radiates, right? So,
yep.
Yeah, I ran a dollar store speaker wire antenna, a fan dipole, 80, 40, 20, and 15 for 7 years. Now, at the 5-year mark, it started to, if a strong wind came, I'd have to fix an element. By year 6, I had to fix it twice a year. And at year 7, when I had 5 repairs to do, I decided, yeah, it's probably time to replace this with some better wire. But I was shocked that it lasted that long in the great outdoors.
I haven't
Cheap
used
and
the Buddy
cheery.
Hex. Who's you've used one, right, Paul? No.
What's that?
Have you used the Buddy Hex?
So Eric's got the Buddy Hacks,
Does it
and
have
so
a
I've,
manual?
I've gotten to use his.
In the chat.
Yeah, it's got a crank at the bottom,
Okay.
and so that's how you turn it.
Okay.
It's a pretty slick antenna. It's a pain in the ass to set it up and take it down, but once it's up, it's pretty slick.
Yeah. It seems like there's any antenna that's a pain in the ass to get up is worth it.
It's complicated, and it does take a little while to put them up. But yes, it is a very good antenna. But I definitely, it is not one of those. If you're doing a hit and run, activation, that's probably not the antenna that I would take. But if you are, I mean, take it. Don't get me wrong. But the one that I would want to use. But if you're camping or going to be set up for some extended period of time, the weekend or overnight or whatever, definitely a good choice, and it's going to give you a lot of flexibility with the multiple bands and being able to obviously rotate it.
Yeah.
But you got to go out and manually rotate it every time. That's where you need that kit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, hey, Mike, what are your takeaways? What did you learn from all of it this time?
Yeah.
You set out to do roving, and you said, yeah, this one spot looks pretty homey. I'm going to stay here.
Yeah.
So that's a learning.
Yeah. I mentioned I did the FM back in the fall when I did the contest. I'd never done that before. Enter it as FM only. And if you look into the contest, you'll see there's all these different categories and classes that you can enter in. I usually do what I did in this video, which was a single op portable, which means one person, one location that's not at home. You're portable. And then you're limited to 10 watts or less. Most of the other categories are 100 watts or less, or 100 watts and more. But this has got actually a QRP category. But I've primarily done this, and then there's other categories. You can go FM only, or you can only be 3 bands on 6, 2, and 70. There's different categories depending on what your gear is or how you want to participate. But I've tried the Rove, I've tried FM only, I've learned, but I've kind of learned that I like just going to one place, setting up, because I usually only have a few hours between work and the kids and this and that. But when I can fit it in, I want to go make the most of it. And so I'll probably, continue to stick with this. So that was the first real takeaway. I was curious because I actually set out to rove, and then I quickly during setup was like, no, not doing this again. So I did learn, I think I like the portable operation from a fixed location much better. Definitely some good lessons about testing out gear, like the coax switch. I did some testing, but clearly,
did you put that thing on a VNA?
Multimeter is a lot different than if I had actually taken the time to hook it up before going out.
See, now in my video, I showed you how to do it on the VNA.
Yeah. I was a little bit lazier. I just used the multimeter, but but yeah, doing like a really good test is important. Always test your stuff. The couple things that went wrong in the field, though, whether it was coax, antennas, stuff like that. I had backup stuff, whether it was extra coax, I had extra adapters, I had extra things I could have put into the ground to support the antenna. When one of the spikes, one of the electric fence posts broke because the ground was frozen. Making sure that you have things, electrical tape and zip ties, which I had to use when one of the dipole legs snapped. You got stuff to do those field repairs. And you got backup stuff. That was reinforcing a common lesson. And I was glad I was prepared. But I think what I'm probably like most happy about is a big takeaway for me was it seems like there's more and more people who are willing to try VHF and above when it comes to POTA and stuff. You see it a lot in the soda community, but I not only
Right.
did I have two people show up, just happened to show up, same park, same time, but to do the same thing. But then I worked another park to park on 6 meters and up. Who he was at a different park out, and it's somebody I know, and he's like, "Okay, you're going out for the contest. I'll go out too, and I'll play around on 6 and go from there." He wasn't submitting a log for the contest, but he was out to do POTA, but because others were doing it on the higher bands, he's like, "I'll do it too. I'll help you guys out, and we'll have fun." And working 4 people, there were 3 other people, knowing that there was 4 POTA operators in the same city out doing VHF POTA is like it made me happy. I smiled like this is good. I want people in ham radio to not be afraid to try new and different things. Not be afraid. Certainly, don't be afraid to fail. That's always a good learning experience. But trying different bands that you don't use that often. Trying different antennas, different modes, like that's part of the learning experience. There's something in this hobby for everybody, and you know, you can still, primarily stay in that lane, but don't be afraid to try some of these new things. You might learn something else that helps you better understand what you enjoy doing. And what I've learned about antennas in the VHF space has definitely helped me understand antennas and propagation in the HF space too. But just seeing more people out there, whether it was online or in person, I was like, this is awesome. This is good. It's good to see that people are trying these things, because at the end of the day, when it comes to these bands, if we don't use them, we lose them, and we've lost a couple kilohertz in the 220 band, the 1.25 meter band. We lost some of that. There's considerations now for changes to 900 megahertz and even 60 meters. And if we're not using these bands, it's hard to justify holding on to them and stuff. So it's good to get that activity. Those are the big takeaways.
Hey, Mike, out of curiosity, what's your shirt say?
Oh yeah.
So
That shirt is awesome.
it says, "Please be kind, leave no."
Oh,
band
hold on.
Yep.
Let me embiggen you here. Bam! There we go.
Yep.
Oh, look at that.
Please be kind, leave no band behind. I always like to say the leave no band behind, but I'm a proud Gen Xer, and my first job was at Blockbuster Video. And it's kind of a throwback. I did some digging. I found a font very similar to the old VHS font that you would see on the cassette tapes. And if anyone remembers the saying, please be kind, rewind, when you're, renting videos and stuff, I kind of was like, oh, hey, I wanted to do something with the VHF in lieu of VHS. And then I'd been saying leave no band behind. I was like, oh, hey, please be kind. Just like, just like the old cassette tapes. And there it is. So,
if somebody wanted to buy those, where would they find those at?
Oh, that's easy, because I purchased the domain name. So you can go to leavenobandbehind.com.
Oh, check that out.
And it will redirect to the shop. So,
wow.
yeah, leavenobandbehind.com. I figure saying
awesome.
it that much, I should at least buy the domain.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bring a really good point about experimentation during contests, and so many people get into contests, and they're so gung ho, and they're so damn serious, and they're just like, no, get out of the way. I got points to make. Yeah, and all those points and $2 gets you a coffee at the end of the weekend, right? And maybe a plaque. And I don't want to diss anybody who's chasing that stuff. Good for them, but damn, we always say POTA is a great time to experiment, because it's pretty laid back, and a contest can be an excellent time to experiment if you're not chasing the award.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you did that in spades, man. Like, good on you.
Yep.
Well,
It all started, and when you think about the fact that that's what also motivated me to film my first little short video, was going to do that soda during a contest so we could experiment with a new radio and try different bands and modes. And there's a little clip in the video. I think it's my son or somebody, we say, oh, we just made our first 2-meter sideband contact, like that. It's why we did what we did, and it was fun. And and I realized, oh, I got this radio with all these capabilities and I'm barely scratching the surface here. Let me go out again. And I've done the same thing from that soda point or different parks. And like you said, it's great. I'm not worried about winning anything. I do it, because there's so much out there that we can experiment and try and learn from. Now, what about you guys? What is your experiences with VHF and above? We should actually start with Jeff, because he's been pretty quiet. Have you done much on 6?
I haven't done 6 for probably about 3 years. I think I have 2 contacts during a POTA activation on 6 meters, but after that, I just haven't gone back there. I probably should try to get on there again. Probably will have to wait till May or June to start. No real point trying right now. But yeah, and I mentioned earlier that you really need to have a good active ham radio population in your area, like you do. Phoenix, California, Southern California, maybe into San Francisco. I don't know how well that is there, but I've seen people, they could go out with an HT or a mobile VHF, UHF radio and make a lot of contacts. Here it doesn't happen that way. I was trying to do simplex at a park and I had a storm coming. I just could not get, I had 8 contacts and the storm was just causing so much noise. I got onto the repeater, said, try to get people to get onto 5.2. And I just couldn't hear people. And they weren't that far away from me. And I was kind of up on a hill and I still couldn't hear them. And it could have been the other hill that was blocking one person. But yeah, I'm amazed that, like I was saying before, that in your area that people are that active and will help out others to get those activations done, either soda, POTA, or whatever. And I see it in videos from people in those different areas that I just mentioned. And I'm just like, wow, those people around there are awesome. And I look back at the people around me and I'm like, whew.
Yeah, there is. I mentioned this. And you did a good thing. Like when you were, I always recommend to people, if they want to try activating on 2 meters or whatever, call out to the repeater when you're at the park. If anyone, and just let them know, hey, can you switch to 5.2 or 5.5 or whatever, and let's see if we can try simplex. That there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like, and I've been in positions where I've done that.
It's the same thing as using the spotting page or a cluster.
And that's where I was going with this. Is some contests, like Winter Field Day most recently, and there's some of these contests they don't want you spotting. It's perfectly allowed in the VHF contest. And in fact, like when I was mentioned about not being able to do that 2 meter FM contact and having to switch to sideband, that exchange took place over text. Like he texted me, he's like, no, he's like, FM's not working, let's try sideband, and switched right over. You're perfectly allowed in the VHF space to text, to spot yourself and do things like that, and coordinate over message groups. And that's important. If you think about, I haven't done anything in the microwave space, but you get into some of these really higher bands and you're talking like 10 gigs or so, and you're aiming a dish, and you guys are like, to make that contact work, like so much effort goes into that. You're not just pointing in one direction and calling CQ forever and seeing what happens. You're coordinating that contact and stuff. And I know Vince has seen it happen before, and there's a lot of effort. So you're coordinating. That's perfectly fine. That's probably a whole other discussion, is if contests should allow spotting or not. But I just wanted to point that out. That's something that in the VHF space is, at least these contests, is perfectly fine.
Yeah, indeed. And it sure does help when you're in a highly populated area too, and you're doing a whole lot of these kind of short distance contacts, right? I tried a POTA activation when I was in Southern Ontario last September, and I was on top of the mountain, as
Yeah.
Hamiltonians call it, Niagara Escarpment. It was about a 650-foot bluff overlooking Lake Ontario and pointed towards Toronto with my HT. And I know I could have been heard in Toronto. I was seeing packets on APRS coming back from Toronto, but almost nobody was answering me because I probably picked the wrong time of day to call out on 5.2.
Yeah.
Everybody else was working on repeaters. That's okay. It was fun to try.
Yeah.
Did you call out for the CQ Maritime Mobile Net on 5?
No, that was all before all that doo-doo hit the rotary device.
Gotcha.
But Vince and I do have a 6 meter contact, 6 meter
We
TW
do.
park to park.
Yeah.
Well,
on that
but
same
weren't you guys like
705.
5 feet apart?
Yeah,
It
something like that.
doesn't matter. We were dummy load to dummy load.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not quite dummy to dummy, but we had a lot of fun that day. It was great. Great fun
were you
experiment
guys
like
running?
that.
Was it SO2R or was that operating SO2R on the?
No,
the 705?
202R.
Oh, 202. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we operated, and it was nice, being QRP, where we weren't interfering with each other as much as we could have been.
Yeah.
But for most of it, he was set up, I was set up. We were almost like back to back, and I don't think we interfered much with each other, and we were on, I think 17 and 20 maybe or something like that,
Yep,
and
that's right.
then we kind of wrapped up. It was nice.
Well, then we wrapped up and then we put our radios beside each other and put two dummy loads a foot apart. And then we did the 6 meter contact. So, yeah, it was great fun.
Nice. Well, Paul, I know you've had some ups and downs when it comes to doing 2 meters up on the Soda Peaks.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's up here. It's hit or miss. Like our mountains are very different than the West Coast and the rest of the country. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to almost have a Yagi, even at the summits up here, because I've been up there, and a 4,000 footer where I'm leaps and bounds above everything else, and I should be heard, but I get better reception like halfway down the mountain than I did at the top. But I was wondering, while we're having this conversation, I keep hearing 5.2 mentioned, but have you used the adventure protocol frequencies at all?
Like 5.8, and I know that one off the top of my head, right? And for 2
Yeah.
years. I don't know the other ones. Usually when I've done stuff here, I've done just 5.2 when I've gone out. For the contest, there's a lot of activity on 5.5 on 2 meters. And I know like our club has active 6 and 2 meter nets on sideband. And so those frequencies that the club uses for nets tend to be really active in the contests and stuff. But most of what I've done, whether it's a contest or not, is on 5.2 or the national calling frequencies. I haven't used a lot with the adventure ones. And I don't know that a lot in this area use it, but I know like out in California and some other places where soda is a lot more common, that it definitely gets used a lot there.
Yeah.
I always try it just to see, but
yeah. Chris has got a question. It's kind of interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Vince, you're actually licensed in both countries, and Mike, you're right up there by the border. You guys might have an answer.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I forget the line that we're talking about. There's a line that comes into play for
A line.
The A line for some of the frequency use, and like I think we got to stay above 430. We can't go down to 420
to
or
430 can't use.
But
what about power?
But I don't think that there's anything that comes into play with power. I've only used I've done a couple with 50 watts when I did the FM. I was just using a mobile, but I'm usually 10 or so. but I don't know that there's anything that has to do with power other than it. I don't know if the Canadians have different power restrictions than the Americans for their licenses, but
Yeah, yeah, there is. We're both limited to at top ticket 1500 watts average or 2250 PEP, but that varies by license class in Canada. The the way I recall the regulation, and I'd have to go do some digging, Chris, which is why I said to go do some digging because I can't quite remember, is that applies to repeater stations rather than and automated and remote
okay.
stations on certain frequencies, plus or minus Umpty Dumpty miles of the border, or as you guys refer to it, the A line.
So
So
I just
that's
have
the way I remember it.
quick point of clarification because I do have a hearing loss. Is that the A as in Apple A or A as in Canadian A?
That's not
A,
the A as in maple syrup, but it's the A as in
Okay.
A
Okay.
as in
Alpha.
alpha.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure. I heard Jeff say it. I'm like, I, I wasn't sure. I just want to make a point of
It's one of those.
clarification there.
It's one of those questions on the extra exam.
Mm.
Oh,
And Jeff would know
well,
that. And it's
Yes.
not the A line either. It's not what that's
oh,
about.
the Fonzie line.
No, no, it's not that at all.
Mm.
Yeah. What about you, Tim? Have you done a lot? Have you tried much on 6 and above for POTA?
So I used to be very active when I worked in Indianapolis. I'm kind of in between two towns with I don't know 50, 60 miles between us. So up in Indianapolis, there's a lot of well, actually not a lot. But there are a handful of high profile repeaters up there. So when I was driving about an hour each way to work, I'd spend a lot of time on the repeaters. But outside of that, not a whole lot. I think I've checked into one 6 meter FM net maybe 10 years ago,
Okay.
and that's been about it. I've done a fair amount of 6 meter JT65 and FT8 back in the day, but the band kind of died out again, and I guess it's picked back up this summer. But every time I go there, I scan it occasionally, but I don't hear anything, and then I go back to 10.
TMZ line. I see Brian in the chat. Nice. Well, hey, listen, if people have stuck around this long, let me give you some tips. And these are, if, whether, those of us on the stream, those watching in the chat, or anyone who tunes in later, team replay, you made it this far. Here's some of the, the tips, some big takeaways if you want to give this a try. Okay. The first thing I would say is look for the contest windows, the January, June, and September contests are the big ones. Okay. Obviously more people are going to be out in June and in September versus January. But those are the times. Those are the big ones. There's some other activities and stuff, but go out during a contest because that's when there's going to be activity. Now, if you're primarily HF and you don't have anything that does 2 meter sideband, so you're not going to be doing FT8 on, 70 centimeters or something. But you want to give 6 a try. The June contest is where it's at. You're going to want to be out there during the June contest because 6 meters generally is better in the summer, just like 10 and 160 are better this time of year in the winter. Start to see a better chance of getting some openings on 6 meters. So look at that June contest. That's June in general is going to be a good time to try 6 to begin with.
For sure.
But get out there, and if you're after a 6-pack ward, or you just want to see what propagation or operating on 6 is like, June that's a really good time. And I kind of we talked about it before earlier when we had a little sidebar conversation about spotting yourself or calling out on repeaters, letting people you want to go out and activate on 2 meters and above or something. Let people locally know. Let people in your club know. Um, Try to plan it out in advance. At least give people some notice. Um, but think about the times, whether it's a contest or a time of day of the week, when you might want to be calling out. Um, I've done straight up 2 meter POTAs, and I've been really successful when I've done them like 5, 6 o'clock to catch people in the car on their commutes back home locally. Definitely try to plan in advance. Give people a heads up, but think about the time of day, where people might be. You're gonna have it's gonna be harder to activate on 2 meters if you're going out at 10:30 in the morning. People are probably already at work or going about their day. They're done with breakfast. So think about those
So
things.
11 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, it's not a
Yeah.
good time.
Mm-mm. Probably not. No, you don't know unless you try, and that's so don't be afraid to fail and make mistakes. But excuse me, yeah, give it a shot. But those are the big things, and the most unique thing, and I've mentioned it in a couple of the videos that I've taken away from operating on VHF and UHF is cross polarization, and that's why I've got some of these antennas where I can easily switch between vertical and horizontal, because even though you might be on FM, on 223.5, the calling frequency on 1.25 meters, some people that take VHF and these bands seriously, they're running serious antennas. Those are not going to be vertical. They're all going to be horizontal because that's how you can build them to get that gain. And they want that directionality as well. You want to concentrate that power in the direction you're trying to go, and you're going to get maybe a 40 dB loss if they're running horizontal and you're running vertical. That loss is huge, especially if you're running on a 510 watt radio. You cannot afford to get that much of a loss, and so even making things like speaker wire dipoles that you can just use with your HT, or I've had to tell people to hold, if you're using the Baofeng, you had to make a couple contacts in the video holding it sideways,
Kind of like
because
this.
people were running horizontal,
Gangsta
and
style.
you could hear the difference
Right.
immediately, and stuff, and that's probably the biggest takeaway is realizing how much that cross polarization matters. And that's one of those things you kind of hear about in the book, and you're taking your exams and you're learning and stuff, but it's true. it's like tropo when you catch that the first time too. It's like, oh my gosh, I read about this and I'm having
It's
80
magic.
mile QSO from an HT just standing by the water. It's nuts.
So hey, I'm going to go ahead and let's start wrapping it up here. Ham Nation is going to be starting in about 5 minutes, so I want to go ahead and clear that up real quick. I think tomorrow night, Freddie Mac and Alan Punk Rock Ham Radio have premieres on Thursday night Ham Radio. Obviously, Ham Nation is tonight, and leading. The videos tomorrow night, the premieres will be leading into the Coffee and Ham Radio's live stream. I believe Jason Ham 2.0, Ham Radio 2.0 has his happy hour on Friday night. And
Correct.
then I believe Josh will be back with the Ham Radio Crash Course on Saturday. I think that is all of them. Vince, well, you premiered a video tonight. Anything else coming up this week?
Yeah, I've got another video I am working on the joys of splicing coax. And lately, my buddy and I, we've been shipping a whole bunch of more Studer kits and CW paddles. So take a peek at my shop if you're interested to learn more.
Awesome. How about you, Paul?
Well, so I'm working on Winter Field Day video footage. I think what I'm going to end up doing is breaking it up into several videos. There was so much great content during my live stream. I don't know if that was legit, because I mean it was kind of like scheduling, right? The Winter Field Day contacts there.
You're out having fun. That's all that matters.
Yeah. It was a ton of fun, but there was a few moments during the live stream where we kind of had some heart to hearts with the members in the chat, and I want to kind of cut those parts out and release those on their own. So yeah, there'll be some good content coming, and of course, all of the great live streams that welcome me on is fantastic. And thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming here. Jeff?
I don't have anything premiering this week. I premiered last night, actually. Got some more videos to finish up, and just going to decompress from studying for my extra. Got to take a little break, and then I'm going to get into CW eventually. But
Did you pass?
yes, I passed.
Okay.
Yeah, with flying
And heard.
colors.
Awesome.
And-
Congratulations.
Thank
Andy
you.
went out the next day and activated Stroke AE. I'm eagerly waiting to see what that video
Yeah.
looks like.
I did not get onto any extra portions of the band. I just didn't think
Oh.
about it.
No
It's
big
all
deal.
good, man.
It's all good.
I think 10 meters is 10 meters. Yeah, 10 meters
Yeah.
was doing pretty good that day, so I was
Yeah.
quite happy with
Yeah,
that.
you were really loud in Alberta on 10 meters.
Cool. Yeah.
Good deal. Awesome. Mike, how about you?
I mentioned it in the beginning. The AM rallies this weekend.
Well,
it actually
I will
starts
be out there.
Friday night at 7. I did this last year. I found out about it. It's an AM contest. AMRally.com has got some more info. It starts Friday night Eastern at 7 and runs like through the weekend. It'll give you more on the dates and times. But that website, AMRally.com, at least last time I was there, had some good info on operating on AM, like what frequencies to be around and everything like that. So if all goes well, I'll try to get out maybe for a late shift POTA on Friday or Saturday and be on 40 meter AM, maybe some 80 meters there. Looking forward to it. It's been a little bit since I've been on AM, so it'll be fun.
Awesome.
Something different.
Good deal. Well, hey guys, thank you very much for joining, and everybody, thank you for joining tonight. I think this has been a good stream, and check us out for social media. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. And I guess say goodbye, everybody.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.